Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Chicago-based improvising pianist, composer, and music director Matt Piet. We caught up with him about his life as a musician during COVID-19, his life and music overall, hope for the future, and so much more. He began his studies as a pianist and vocalist at the age of 10 and was proficient as a classical pianist by his early teens. He went on to the Berklee College of Music in Boston, but came back to Chicago in 2014 as an active participant in the city's rich jazz and improvised music scene. He's got a great story. Enjoy.
Good. Hey, thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me.
Sure. So talk to me a little bit about what you've been working on. How has the quarantine creative process been for you?
Well, I've been trying to count my blessings in the fact that I play an instrument that has plenty of great backlog of repertoire to work on. And that if I were truly quarantined even for years, there would be plenty of stuff for me to work on. So the fact that I can play by myself and with my own ideas gives me at least something to work on, even though it's not the same as interacting with everyone. So now that we're on a year of that, that was sort of where I put my mind about a year ago. And had a really good 3 months of working my chops up and kind of following my instincts, whether that was to play tunes or to improvise or compose or play written music of any sort. Probably the most significant thing to come out of that was then feeling like I needed to do something to document where I was creatively. And in late June of last year, I went into the studio to do something that was sort of against what my normal instincts would be and do a record where I overdubbed myself in 3 successive or subsequent layers without listening back and without really any pre-written material besides just some things I'd written down as general ideas from which to improvise. It turned out to be the tonic that I needed for the time. I think that if I had done it a day earlier or a day later, it would have been an entirely different creation. But I'm happy that it turned out to be what it is, which is a 30-minute record of 15 discrete pieces that are made through that same process of improvising one on top of the next, on top of the next. It just feels like the kind of honest statement that I needed to make, and a better or more interesting statement than just doing some solo piano records. So that alone allowed me to feel for most of the rest of 2020 and even the beginning of this year satiated enough that, hey, I did something I'm proud of.
So what do you miss the most about that old world?
Beyond that, we're getting to a point where now in Chicago, at least at Constellation, there are some gigs opening up. I'm just happy that I've been able to do 2 of them. They've both been without an audience and they've just been live streamed, but they do have some really great high definition robotic cameras that they've installed. And so it's just great to know that what people are seeing and hearing at home in that case, as a pianist, they're hearing a great piano. They're hearing the way that it actually sounds. I don't have the luxury of I can't go and play a duo gig out in a park like some people were doing in the late summer or early fall last year, because even if I were to do that on a keyboard, I wouldn't have power hookup, and I don't really play keyboards. So I'm not dragging out a concert grand to do that. I cherish any moment I have with a really nice piano and hopefully some good compatriots.
What do you miss the most about that old world back in March that you're looking forward to getting back to?
Well, I think that the first thing that comes to mind, and the thing that having done a few gigs and then being done with them and having to just go home, it's the community, it's the hang with mostly other musicians who come out and we all support each other. So it's seeing all those people. I'm not totally out of touch with other folks in the scene, but there's only so much you can do to check in. There's only so much that changes. And so checking in sometimes seems a bit redundant, even though you care. And so what is missing from especially finishing a gig and then having that sort of back to reality moment for a while, it's not followed by what I'm used to, which is then hang out and talk about either that music or some other music, or just hang out with my friends, who are also my colleagues. And for that, I'm very fortunate to begin with. But whenever that can resume in some way that feels even a little bit more normal, it'll be so satisfying to have happen that I'll be probably blown away by things I can't even imagine at this point.
Yeah, without a doubt. So you're up in Chicago. Talk to me a little bit about how jazz and music became your profession.
Eventually, I came to a time where I realized that I was always primarily an improviser, and that felt like it took a while. I started playing piano and singing when I was 10, and I took to it rather quickly. But if there was any way that my classical studies were stunted, it was that I was not particularly disciplined because I wanted to get to the point, and I had a pretty good ear. And I just didn't know that improvising freely or improvisation as an art form unto itself was something that really could be done. I was that naive that I was unaware until I was 17 that there was someone who improvised on the piano who was as popular as Keith Jarrett, let's say. That alone allowed me to start saying to myself, well, I guess this jazz idiom that you're falling into really makes sense. Also worked out quite well because I was always a devotee of the Great American Songbook, even at a young age, and so to translate an already improvisatory attitude to tunes that I knew quite well seemed like a pretty natural progression. But I still felt pretty late to the game in that I didn't really start learning anything about it in any formal manner until I was 17, 18 years old. And then when I moved to Boston to go to Berklee College of Music, so I think all of college I felt like I was behind. And then most of my 20s I felt like I was behind. And it wasn't until I really put together that I was someone who wanted to explore different concepts of harmony, different headspaces in a very free manner, and that perhaps that had some validity today, even if we still call it something like free jazz or the avant-garde 60 years after its explosion into the world. That seems like the area where I fit the most. I still love playing standards. I still love playing really high-level cocktail piano or solo piano or trio stuff. I'm not deluding myself that I'm going to be any better than Bud Powell. So I may as well try to be a better me if I can.
Yeah.
And it took me until my late 20s to have that revelation, and it took seeing that happening in Chicago to really wake me up to it, and that cemented my move to Chicago and my devotion to checking out Chicago's improvised free music scene, and basically just diving in head first and growing by leaps and bounds over a period of just a few years, so that after a couple of years I had accumulated quite a lot of improvised recorded material that I was far beyond what I had initially tried to do to make up for lost time in my 20s. By my early 30s, I'm about to turn 35, so now I've been at the piano for officially 25 years, and really only at the decision to really play free music free improvised music for about 5 to 6 years at this point. It's really only a small portion of my whole musical background, but it feels like it was an inevitability.
So what was the first live jazz show you ever saw that really made you think, man, this is something I'd love to do?
I had some flirtation with live jazz that I was exposed to, going back to age 12 or something. I saw Oscar Peterson a few times. I saw Sonny Rollins. I saw Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter. And there were varying degrees to which I either understood the music or to which I really dug it. And so in my high school years, I was just so busy that my main thing was, as far as my record consumption or my knowledge of jazz, had a lot to do with my love of Miles Davis through initially Kind of Blue, and then also my exposure and love of Bill Evans' piano playing. For a while, until I went to a Berklee College of Music summer program at 17, I just didn't have anyone giving me tools to explore the discography that was out there, to really understand the history and understand that maybe some music theory that I already understood could be applied to playing over chord changes. But I was very fortunate to grow up in suburban Chicago and go to Ravinia quite a bit every year when there was a jazz weekend, to go to Symphony Center whenever they had jazz programming, and see quite a bit. But I think it took some time through college to have some really life-changing experiences, seeing Brad Meldau quite a bit at that time, seeing Keith Jarrett at that time, and kind of getting through my hero worship of those two particular piano players, and eventually getting a lot of it out of my system too, which was probably the best for me. I also had the really great fortune of seeing Cecil Taylor do a solo concert in New York just before I graduated college, and that could possibly stand as the greatest concert I ever attended. I wouldn't argue the point if someone posited that, because it definitely took me to another place that I never thought I'd even attempt to try to go to myself, until I learned more about what I didn't want to do as a jazz player, and that maybe I didn't need to be another straight ahead player, or that I would have to devote myself to the exclusion of all else to certain practice regimen that would just produce a copycat of sorts. I needed to find a way to become my best and most genuine original self, and surprise myself as much as possible. Be part of a process rather than copying areas of a tradition, especially if I couldn't hold a candle to those people whose tradition I was stealing.
When we do return to you return to the stage and we return to the audience, when this is all kind of slowed down, and as you've mentioned, getting back and hanging and getting back to some level of normalcy, what do you hope we all realize about the power of live music when we return?
I hope that we've already realized it. Those of us who rely on it or have historically relied on it before. I hope we appreciate what it is, how it feels different than a live stream, or than even listening to a record, or all these things, all these realities, the ways that it can just interact with your central nervous system in real time in a way that can be mind-altering, life-changing, all of that. But that in each individual case, everyone who's a part of maybe a greater jazz community understands, okay, we all were denied some stage time, so let's share it well. Let's support each other. Let's maybe give people the benefit of the doubt when we do listen, but also not. If our opinion is valid that we just don't dig something, then you know what? All we have in life is our time and our attention, and I try to remind myself of that as much as possible. So, having been denied the option to give my attention and my time more to live music, I hope that when I have the opportunity to do it more often, that I really do it with all of my heart. And I hope that, and I would imagine, knowing people as I know them, as my colleagues and compatriots in the field, I think they'll do the same.
So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one that's living your life. Who do you think you are?
I think that I'm a vaudevillian that somehow managed to work his way into other areas. I think I'm only a few things. Maybe I'm sort of an actor and sort of a storyteller, but all these things are not what I am when I'm on the stage as a musician. And certainly now, since I've become a jazz musician or become an improvising musician, I think that I do separate those things very much. And so what I am most often, if I'm not playing music, is, I hope, a curator of experiences for other people, because I've been fortunate enough to learn and acculturate myself enough over time that I have boundless enthusiasm for trying to turn other people on to what has influenced me, because I don't get to do it again for the first time. But if I learn enough and have taste that is so special to me, that means so much to me, if I can curate experiences for other people because I know that I've checked out as much as I possibly can, and I take it very seriously, then hopefully I can give people the good parts version. And I can be an alternative to a Wikipedia article or a Spotify playlist. I can be the real person who can be your friend, can be a bit professorial and maybe a bit obnoxious, but who cares so much about it that I just can't help but share it.
Wonderful. That's a great answer. Matt, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz. Good luck with the return to the stage and everything else.
Thanks so much for talking to me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Matt for his time, music, and energy. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.